Okay, who's with us? More with us? So we're now gonna, so I don't think anyone on the panel needs any introductions because everyone's already been on the panel before, haven't you? Yeah, we're gonna have guys on the end. You keep sort of coming up and talking to us, but you know.
I said I'm like a bad rash.
Exactly. We love him anyway. So what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about data. One of the things that I just found amazing this afternoon, maybe it's a Friday afternoon, maybe people had too much to drink last night. They were saying, oh yeah, Netflix is going to introduce advertising. No one seems to think that if Netflix introduces advertising, that means they're probably going to take $10 billion out of the current advertising market. Yeah. The question shouldn't be, oh yeah, they're going to introduce advertising. It'd be, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get more of that advertising revenue from? Yeah. And I think a lot of it is we hope that data can be part of it, but it's not always easy to use data. It's not always easy to apply it in organisations. So kind of the first thing we wanted to talk a little bit is, Zach, maybe from your experiences, what are the areas that people can actually practically use data in? Not some idea of how it can solve the world's problems, reopen the federal government, yeah? But how do your customers actually use and activate data on a day-by-day basis?
I think it comes down to what the objectives are. One of the things that, and I was even looking at the description of this panel, didn't make mention of creative, and yeah, 50% of sales can be attributed to the creative when looking at advertising in general. So, from sort of our view of the world, whether it's a brand, or a publisher, media company, there's a tremendous amount of data there that can be turned into a tremendous amount of value from a decision-making standpoint. But I think it's really about, what are we trying to achieve, and then defining what data we're going to use and how we're going to use it. So, when we come in and looking at it from a content standpoint, whether a brand has, 10 assets they've created previously or 50,000, it's still an evaluation of what they've done previously, how it's worked, what they can learn from that, and then tapping into other data sources or sets to predictively bring some insights into different decisions.
So can you give us a real world example of someone who's done that, and how it's actually impacted their revenues?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, recent example, Citizen Watch commercial, and the executive producers trying to decide on how to end this commercial. It was an Alice in Wonderland theme, the rabbit that's always late, and the expected ending would have been he shows up late but gets let into the movie. The unexpected ending was he doesn't. And we were looking at it from sort of contextually everything else that we knew was going to be included, visually, audibly, etc. And then say, can we first quantify the expectedness of ending and then predictably say one is going to perform better than the other based on who their audience is, where it's going to be distributed, etc. And so looking at that one specific decision and then sort of planning out what data do we need, how do we quantify something that's sort of a softer data point, but being able to go back and say, based on forecasting model we ran several thousand times, our data says this is going to perform better than that. Now as a person or a team, do with it what you want, right? We've just delivered some additional insights into that decision-making process.
Well, I'm curious, which ending did better?
The unexpected, significantly.
And so the interesting question for me, which I think also links a lot to you, Mark, is did they, when you gave them the data, did they then act upon it? How did they act upon it?
So, well, okay. I think that, I don't know if they acted upon it in that situation or not.
You can tell us. Yeah, they did.
I will say a couple things, because I'll just talk. So our perspective is on the sell side, and how the sell side is using data clearly in an effort to maximize the value of their inventory. And when I look around at our clients today, they do have a lot of data. They have invested a ton of money in BI, they're investing in AI, but I think a lot of times one of their challenges is how do they take that data from a team of 4 or 5 people and disseminate it across the board. So your first question was, how can you use data today? What can you do already? To me, it's a simple, and one of the things we work on and are looking to try to help them on is getting that data down to the people who actually are doing the execution, so that when they have the data, it's actually in front of them as to how they can use that inventory, where they should be pricing, how they should be targeting audiences, or targeting the people to whom they're selling. And then further, the challenge they have is you have, particularly on the linear side, it's not so much on the digital side, but on the linear side, you do have, let's call it a plethora or a mass range of perspectives of AEs. Some are working to always learn, be more advanced, take advantage of what's happening. Others have been doing this for a number of years, and they're like, F it. I'm 55, I got 10 more years left, I don't need to learn anything new. You can throw me every data you want, tell me to buy it here, I'm gonna sell it, to John and, Chrissy down the street. I've always been doing it, this is the price. Meanwhile, the data's telling them something different. So you do have to learn how to enforce the usage of that data as well.
Yeah, if I can add one more example. With one of the publishers that we work with, they're, in very simple terms, the ad sales process was, we've got a DIY show, let's call IKEA and see if they want to sponsor it. And we work with IRI, which I think the last panel was talking about ComScore Nielsen, we're looking at their purchase-based audience data. When we append that to video viewing or consumption data, we can look at what content resonates with buyers of different brands and products or categories. And when we take 25,000 assets and pull the top 10 for a Danny Yoga buyer or a pet supply buyer, and put that in front of somebody on the ad sales team, it becomes very simple to say, you can think differently, but it's not going to require a lot of work or time or effort on your part, or really even a change in behavior, right? It's just like a different lead list, and I think that's probably the bulk of the battle.
Exactly, and now I'm just going to continue down the line. We're more casual, right? So but the other thing I think about that, and I know we had discussed this previously in our call, to me, the thing I worry about is we talk about data, you have tons of data coming in, tomorrow you're going to have double that amount of data, and then the next day, quadruple, etc. It's like how you tell about the new shampoo you're using. You tell your friends, they tell their friends. If you remember that, you probably don't, you're pretty young, but thank you. And
you're going somewhere about the big silos of data. Childhood memories. Stick with the big silos of data.
So sometimes I worry that there's so much data, we believe all data is good. And it's not. And you can become a king and a slave to that data and believe so much in the data. And I am saying, you should use the data, but there should be some qualitative analysis as to what you're doing as well. And I think about it, my background, for those who don't know, I'm a corporate finance by background. Tim Hanlon calls me the devil. I mean, he says I said it, but I never did. He did. And what I know is like in the investment
revisionist history.
In the investment world, people are slaves to data. They look at the past and they invest based on that past, believing that's how the future will be. Or they do it because it gives them comfort. So data can give us comfort, but data can lie to us too.
I think that's really interesting. One of the things, there's a client that we worked with this year, and we're pretty sure that a show got cancelled because of bad data that was used around the tuning for the second season and just how it was promoted. Yeah, they're pretty confident that bad data will cause the show to be cancelled. And it's tricky, you've got all of these different silos and how do you fit together and how do you do with them. And I think one of the things I want to talk a little bit about is we talk about lots of data. Just in that vast sea of people out there, has anyone ever worked for a company where there's been a data hack? Or is it just no one admitted to it? Who's worried about getting their data hacked? Yeah. I love the way the live run people are now. They know they're not being hacked. I don't know they don't have any data. The growth of this data, what's that going to do from a privacy perspective? We've got California privacy law coming in towards the end of the year. Yeah. We've got GDPR already in Europe. We're all getting vast amounts of data. We don't know how much of it is actually sensitive to individuals, how much of it isn't. Yeah. How much of this is actually a time bomb that could potentially kill companies, not just not just through bad data, but through privacy-related issues.
Wow. Okay, sit back.
Take that one first.
Well, I guess I'll have a couple of opinions. One, on all the legislation around privacy, I guess there's some concept around it that I would agree with, that maybe we are entitled to some privacy.
This is a merchant bank only coming out.
But
some privacy.
Well, with that said, listen, regulation. How many people have an investment in a mutual fund? And how many people every year get a 250-page perspective on that? And how many of you read it? Wow, I'm really impressed, because I don't. I didn't read my mortgage documents, I just signed it. And so to me, GDPR has become that. You click accept and you move on, and I wonder if the California, now, those government agencies on occasion will go after companies. So far it's actually the big companies, which has surprised me. I thought the European Union would have taken one or two small companies down, but I think if there's a hack where some information really gets out, that will destroy that company, and I think maybe less because of the legislation and more because of the consumer will force abandonment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think from a consumer perspective, we're good with it when it provides convenience, but then when it's intrusive or threatens, something, then all of a sudden we're not. Change happens. I think, and it probably becomes, as much of a political conversation as anything. But I think it's something that there needs to be conversations happening about it. It doesn't generally feel like they are yet, and probably when they will, it's because something bad happens and triggers it, and we're more reactive than proactive. And just watching like the Weiss documentary on how China's using AI and facial recognition, I think it gets to a dangerous place very quickly. So I hope something other than what normally triggers these conversations can trigger it before that happens.
Because I think this is part of the nub of the problem for, if you think about broadcasters across the country, you've got people who are sitting on a big legacy business, which is worth a lot of money, and you've got people who've worked in that business for a long time and used to the way they're doing it, and then they're trying to compete with these new entrants who haven't got a legacy business. They can risk everything. Yeah? They're not going to lose anything if they fail. And they haven't got a legacy team of people going out selling stuff and all the way without using data. Yeah? How do you take an organization which is, can't take big risks, yeah? And how do you start to use data in a safe way without risking its old business and to try and bring the staff along with it? That's the real question.
Well, I guess a couple of trains of thought. With the, I guess a lot of the more traditional media companies introducing streaming services, I look at that much more as a data play in terms of understanding what people are watching, how they're consuming it, more than a revenue play. And I think in order to compete with the streaming services that have been doing this for years now, or a decade plus, that's just it's par for the course. And you're really trying to play catch up if you haven't been doing that. And I think then it becomes a decision of how best to do that. Is it grow and innovate through acquisition, or try to do something organically? But in terms of getting out there, and sort of keeping up, I think really data is going to play a key role in that. And it's do we have it? If not, what's the best way to get it and utilize it?
It's about buying the data in, you'd say. Yeah.
So, I think there's a couple of opportunities for those organizations. So on the one side, what you were saying is, let the small startups take all the risk and then you buy them. Almost every large company innovates through acquisition and not through internal means. Secondly, I will say in a lot of ways, the broadcasters are in a great position. And you saw Al and Jeff, they have made a lot of progress. I'm not saying they have some ways to go, they do, but at the same time, brands and agencies do trust the integrity of those organizations in a way they don't trust upstarts. And so, even if, I would argue that a Hearst could take some side risks without hurting its reputation, even if it went awry. They could do side projects, be honest about what those are, and ask the brands and agencies to work with them and take some risk with them. And I think they would have the ability to be more successful than if it's an upstart just trying to do that.
Interesting. So I think so the view with a how do you actually so that's fine, I think, for the big level, but how does that change what's happening on the ground with people just selling local advertising? Yeah. I don't see there's a whole bunch of startups about how to do that digitally.
Okay. I'll jump in on this one, because we do a lot of local advertising at Matrix. Or we work in that a lot. So I think it's twofold. You're right, there's a lot of legacy salespeople there. And I think one of the things that you will see over time is one, as technology, we talk about tip, we talk about a lot of the automation. You should see, I would predict, within, let's say, 3 years, a local sales rep will be able to double the amount of business they're able to do because of the efficiencies of the underlying technologies. And they will also learn. So some of those people who aren't willing to learn will have to move on. But it is going to be, I believe, linear broadcast. I believe there'll be more of a common currency. I think the sale will move more to audience-based, and I think you are going to be selling an impression-based sale with some specific spot across everything you're selling in those sales locally, and you become almost like a mini agency for those local companies.
And are the data sets available now that you need to do that? Or are there other data sets that you need that aren't out there?
Well,
how do you sell
of course we don't have a currency yet for selling audience in television. It's not there. It's coming. And why I say, listen, I'm not saying Nielsen data is good or bad. I'm saying that, or I was saying before, I'm a big believer that the people buying Nielsen today are doing everything they can to be able to go to audience where Nielsen's not involved. They want to get rid of Nielsen. And so I think once that comes, then you have it.
That's interesting. Yeah, but so what about the whole kind of direct response area where there's already no Nielsen in that? Do you actually need currency? Everyone always talks about TV advertising as if it's all about something being measured by Nielsen and you can pay on that, but actually there's a high portion of it which is just sold on a performance basis in the same way as the internet. Isn't that an area of growth? Is that how it should go? What's the difference between that and selling an audience in your mind?
Yeah. I view it as, I'm saying that's the same thing, right? You need to be able to measure the audience to whom you're selling. So if you're, Comcast, you can, you get households, you don't get the individuals necessarily that are doing the watching, right? Because you're not on a pane of glass measuring the individual person. But as we get those measurements into the television sets, you'll be able to couple that with set-top box, with IP addresses. To me, that's what the audience is, and then you have the impressions.
Got it. So it makes sense. So what we're saying is we're seeing an evolution where basically a lot of innovation done outside, and then internally it's just about buying in a bits of software, starting to do things, getting that building up, getting that adoption. That's how we see data working. That sounds good. Do we have any questions from the floor, anybody?
I'll start, and so in your estimation, all three of you, who has the bigger challenges and hurdles to put together and start the process of gaining and deriving actionable insights from their data that's coming in into their worlds? Is it the sell side or the buy side? Like, which is more compromised or challenged, or is it an equal opportunity pain point for both sides?
I'm going to go first. I think the buy side is in a much stronger position. Yeah, I think the buy side, the new data sets, all of the brands are building up massive data sets on a first-party basis. Yeah, they can then buy in data sets about exactly where they want to be targeting people. They can understand more efficiencies. I'm seeing a lot more investment from the buy side in trying to reduce the spend that they're doing and making their spend better than I am on the sell side trying to actually justify the cost of what they're doing. Yeah, it seems to be more about people saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm not duplicating my people, or I'm not buying where. Personally, I see a lot more of that than I see people on the sell side saying, hell, I need data, otherwise no one's going to buy my inventory.
Yeah, but and again, I'm speak to more what we do or I know, but I guess on the sales side, I would assume it's going to be continue to be driven by the quality of the product, right? Ultimately, and I think that's where there's a huge opportunity for innovation, utilization of data, which hopefully for anybody that's out there selling inventory against it is easier with a better product.
I will concur. It is definitely the buy side is in better shape. The sell side has one massive disadvantage. They do not have access to KPI information as to results. Sure, they can look at targeting as results, but they don't know how it's impacting the actual revenues of those organizations directly. And so as a result, they're a little bit blind in how they're able to price out their inventory.